great pleasure to welcome Professor Curtis Bonk and Meina Zhu, who are going to be talking to us from Indiana University in Bloomington, where it's evening there. And Kurt will later this evening be heading out to see a game. He's got his team colours on and his team tie. Very good. Excellent. That's a beaver, you said. The Wisconsin.
It's a badger.
It's a badger, not a beaver. Badger. So we don't have badgers, you see. So it's different for us here in New Zealand. And so Meina and Kurt have done a lot of studies, various studies about MOOCs, the massive open online courses, and are going to share some of the studies with us. And one key focus this time around will be on how to help learners to be self-directed, self-regulated, with a key goal being to continue the learning, bring it to fruition, and to actually finish the MOOC, which can be an issue. So I'm not going to take up too much airtime. What I will be doing is I've been asked to remind people or to advise people that this session is being recorded and will be later circulated via FLANZ networks and via Kurt's networks. And I would invite people, if you've got any questions and discussion ideas for afterwards, to please note them in the chat, and I'll collect those up, because Meina and Kurt are going to talk for just over half an hour and present to us, and then it will be good to have the conversation part of the FLANZ webinar conversation. So welcome both, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane, for inviting us. It's great to be back in New Zealand virtually. I think it's the third time or fourth time virtually. I've been there physically twice. Elaine, who's with us there, thanks Elaine for my co-author of the Tech Variety book. It's great to be connected to her again, virtually anyhow. I'm currently working on a MOOCs book, going crazy, editing 30-odd chapters and getting pictures, bios, and abstracts from 67 people. But I have an earlier one, MOOCs and Open Ed around the world, that's got 30-some chapters. This one will have chapters from Sri Lanka and Egypt and Nepal and India and China and Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. Elaine will be happy with that. And other places, Kenya and so forth. We did another little special issue on MOOCs and Open Ed at the same time. This is 2015. Now, 4 years later, we're going to do one on, this is on the emerging economies or developing world. And so I'm knee deep in making new friends and learning what's going on in the wonderful world of MOOCs. So that's why we're going to start this talk with what's happening in the wonderful world of MOOCs before we get into our research. So I want to give you a little overview of what trends are out there and quickly go through some of those things just to give you a sense that there are real people out here being impacted by this. It's this notion of MOOCs being dead is a misnomer. I mean, there are millions of people signing up every year, literally 100 million actually. Not all complete, of course, but a lot of lives are changing, and that's an interest of mine. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we'll come back out of the share screen mode later on when we go to Q&A. And we've been a little bit cheeky entitling this talk. It's not the same as what you got in your announcement, Fostering Self-Directed Learning and Personalization in MOOCs for Modest Little Studies to Help Save the Planet. If you think about it, if we can get people to be more self-directed, if we can get instruction to be more personalized, and there are 100 million people signing up, we are, in effect, doing something to help save the planet. At least that's the goal. Let's start with the weird stuff out there, weird, strange stuff that's going on. Then we'll get into our studies, including a systematic review of the research, instructional design considerations, Meina's dissertation on self-directed learning, and other things. And you can see the minions are laughing at me right now. If you remember 2.5 years ago when I was in New Zealand, I talked about 30 ways learning is changing. And I actually wrote a piece for the FLANZ network that's on this, it's open access. One of those 30 ways was about massive learning. And that's what the focus will be here today. We're also doing research on other things like flipped learning and collaborative learning and open education resources and informal, but today we'll focus on MOOCs. These 30 trends relate to engagement, access, and personalization. How many of you have taken a MOOC? How many of you happy or frustrated? You know, a lot of people are both, right? A lot of people have tried. Meina here took several MOOCs during my classes as supplemental class activities. She had to supplement her final project by taking and doing a MOOC. But there's some weird stuff here. Just having a tagline, never stop learning. The companies out there today, the mission to learn kind of stuff. We're now connected always to learning. And we're in this learning century. MOOCs are a key part of creating a learning century where people get upskilled and reskilled all the time. I just was reading a report that Tom Reeves sent me this afternoon about 4 trends in MOOCs and what's going to be happening in the near future. And it's the workplace, it's the employees that need just-in-time training that are starting to take advantage of MOOCs. You know, my friend Sheila Jagannathan at the World Bank, who has a chapter in the last MOOCs book, she'll have a chapter in the next MOOCs book, talking about poverty and climate change MOOCs and financial planning. She was interviewed by Chief Learning Officer magazine, and they called her a teacher of the world. We are teachers of the world today. We are no longer instructors in a set little space in a university. We are now, in effect, teaching students around the world. My 4,000 person MOOC, I made new friends from South Africa and Australia and Netherlands and Belgium and Russia. I mean, I really like the fact that I can make friends and impact people around the world. And I can have friends. The weird number 2 is I have friends who have taught MOOCs. I have really good friends who have taught 40,000 people. And when we sit down to talk about our classes, it's no longer talking about 30 students. It's now talking about 10,000 or 20,000. My friend Michael there from Thailand, Sri Pratam University in southern Bangkok, teaches MOOCs. My other friends in Japan and in Korea, there are now J MOOCs and K MOOCs and Thai MOOCs. And Indonesia and Malaysian MOOCs are a little smaller, and they have meetups in Indonesia. We just submitted a study to the Australasian Journal of EdTech about instructors in Indonesia. Elaine will find this interesting, and Malaysia, smaller ones with meetups. Another weird thing that's happened is now we have discounts. You can get a price off, a percentage off. If you sign up today, we'll take 15% off your classes. This does not happen in formal education all that much, but summer discounts. Not only do we have summer discounts, we have Cyber Monday. No longer just Black Friday before Thanksgiving in US, Cyber Monday discounts. I mean, this is indicating that MOOCs are impacting the world in unusual ways. We no longer can compare face-to-face to a MOOC because it's a different animal. And you can take, and Meina's been interviewing dozens of people teaching MOOCs and getting transcripts that are really rich, and they teach. You know, one day she's interviewing astrophysicists, and next day nutritionists and financial planners and all this stuff. I mean, we've got a database of 3,200 MOOC instructors. So that's why we're able to we've done a dozen studies of MOOCs, and we're going to give you 4 of our studies. The second wave of MOOCs is happening in that now we're getting degrees wrapped around MOOCs. We're getting credentials wrapped around MOOCs, business plans like the business CEO from Coursera rethinking and now creating a master's in accounting. When I was an accountant, I used to be an accountant, they banned online learning stuff. Now they have a whole master's in it. And we have cybersecurity master's degrees and marketing degrees and data science at discounted prices. Georgia Tech has a $50,000 to $60,000 master's in computer science. It's $7,000 as a MOOC or $8,000. They have a chapter in the book explaining how they reduce the cost. They didn't have to charge fees and different things. So now we've got masters online, we got micro credentials, we got specializations in all these areas. I mean, I think Coursera has 50 some special, maybe more than that, and FutureLearn in the UK and EDX at MIT. Now we've got MOOC-based pricing charts. This was not the case back when I visited you guys 2.5 years ago or so. And now people make wedding announcements and put down that their fiance is taking MOOCs. I mean, this is just weird stuff. And when I was there, I think I presented on the guy in Mongolia who was a teenager who did so well in his MIT MOOC that they took him into MIT and gave him a scholarship. And the guy in Africa who at the time had taken 250 MOOCs, I interviewed him for my next book. He's taking 500 MOOCs, and he got robbed at gunpoint, and all his computers were stolen, and his friends gave him their computers so he could finish his MOOCs. He was taking like 20 at a time. So there's some trends here. My minions are happy. My minions are happy. Elaine's happy. MOOCs are not dead. Okay, you can see the data here. Even though we're hearing about problems, and sure there are, but if you look at some of this growth, I mean, we got Coursera, 37 million people. FutureLearn, 8 million people. And we've got, 2 years ago, the end of 2016, there were 58 million people who had signed up. A year ago, it was 78 million had signed up. Now it's over 100 million signing up at 900 universities around the world, 11,400 MOOCs. So we're tapping into this. We go to the database at Class Central. If you want to find out about MOOCs, subscribe to Class Central and read their monthly reports. Darwell Shah, S-H-A-H, has a number of reports that you can tap into. My colleague and my former student, Timothy Hu, Kifeng Hu at University of Hong Kong, used to be in Singapore. He's analyzed the discussions around MOOCs, what's called course talk. Students can rate courses and discuss courses, and he found in 4,500 course talk comments, these were the 6 things that came out as important in teaching a MOOC. Peer interaction, of course, instructor availability, enthusiasm, resources that can personalize the learning experience, timely feedback, and clear explanations with problem-centered instruction. These were the things that the 10 most highly rated MOOCs had. He's got another study of the 18 most highly rated MOOCs in Teachers College Press. This one, Teachers College Record. He's got another one in IRODL. George Valencianos in Vancouver Island in Canada, he says that he's done a systematic review of the research. He's a good friend of mine, should have been my student. It's a long story why he didn't come here. But he's looked at hundreds of studies, and he said there's not enough qualitative stuff right now. Not enough qualitative, and there's not enough looking at the instructor side, much more on the student side. So Meina and my other doctoral student, one of my others, Anissa Sari from Indonesia, and Dr. Mimi Lee, a colleague of mine, looked at and did a study of the MOOC literature. So we're going to cover that, plus 2 of Meina's studies, and we had a surprise study we'll add at the end. So they just published this a year ago in Internet and Higher Ed, and they looked at what were the research methods, what were the topics that were being looked at in these studies, and where were the researchers coming from? Where were the MOOCs coming from? And you can see some of the journals people publish in, IRODL, a free open access journal. Computers in Ed, British Journal, to be expected, most of these, okay? We also looked at what were the research focuses, mixed methods and quantitative, mostly student focused. 5 studies out of how many studies? 156 studies in the first round. 5 were looking at the instructor side. So that's why we looked at the instructor side. And these were some of the variables that were looked at in that research. So of course, motivation, of course, retention, of course, MOOC design, dropout rates. These were, but self-regulated learning. And this is where we're starting to move into. Quality's become an important issue. Alison Littlejohn in the UK and Sanjaya Mishra from the Commonwealth of Learning in Vancouver look at quality. The countries, US, UK, Spain. There's a lot of unemployment in Spain. You see a lot of MOOCs in Spain. I visited the Open U of Catalonia. They're offering a series of MOOCs and have a journal in the field now. That's an SSCI journal, Journal of Educational Technology and Higher Education, International Journal, EdTech and Higher Ed. Australia, Canada, Turkey, Netherlands. We see New Zealand on the last column there, not so much from there, but some. So this study then got expanded beyond those couple of years to 2013 to 2018. You can see some of the journals. We're now going to add in 2019 here and update this before we will try and publish this in ETR&D in a special issue coming up, or we will probably. So you can see, again, quantitative methods more than qualitative methods. You can see survey data, log data, the easy stuff, platform data, not so much focus groups or observational kinds of things. But there's a need to expand the methods and do mixed method kinds of things. So that's kind of a brief overview of the trends and that first study that kind of gives you a sense of the need. So there's a need for instructor research, hence these two follow-up studies, the third one too, on the instructor side that Meina will be talking about. Just published in December in an online learning, in the Online Learning Journal special issue on AERA papers from this past year. So slide over this.
Thank you, Dr. Bonk, for introducing the background of the MOOC studies. So I will briefly talk about the study 2 and 3. So the purpose of the study 2 is to provide suggestions for future MOOC instructors and instructor designers through exploring MOOC design considerations and challenges. 3 research questions were asked in this study. So first, what are the design considerations instructors considered when designing MOOC courses? So second is, what are the challenges they encountered? And third is, how did they address these challenges? So to address these questions, we use a sequential mixed method design, which we collected the quantitative data first and followed by the qualitative data collection and analysis. The detailed data collection methods including surveys. So we sent survey to 1,400 MOOC instructors and get complete response from 143 respondents. And then given this survey is popped in survey, so the 10% response rate is acceptable. At the end of the survey, we had a question whether they would like to volunteer to join our interview. Among the 50 volunteers, we selected 12 MOOC interviewees to represent as many countries and subject area as possible. And also both before and after the interview, we conducted the MOOC course review. This slide shows the detailed information of the MOOC instructors. As you can see, the instructors, they are from different countries like US, UK, China, Australia, Sweden, etc. And their teaching background are different, like language, education, and computer science. And their courses were provided in different platforms like Coursera, edX, FutureLearn. To increase the trustworthiness of this study, for each research question, we had at least 2 data sources. For the qualitative data, we used a content analysis. For the quantitative data, we conducted descriptive statistics. As you can see, most of the instructors in this study, they only designed 1 MOOC courses. However, 15 MOOC instructors designed 4 or more MOOC courses.
Most of these instructors, by the way, did not have previous online learning and blended learning experiences, more blended than fully online. But a lot of these people were just experts that got arm twisted into teaching a MOOC for the first time and getting into online learning for the first time.
So these are the MOOC survey participants' background information. So their subject areas are from medicine and health, computer science, and also some from geography, visual arts, and agriculture. The learners in their courses vary from less than 5,000 to more than 20,000 students. For research question 1, what are the design considerations? We found that the learning objectives and assessment were the primary pedagogical considerations. If you're the scholars in education technology, maybe you found this is not surprising, as when we design courses, we always think about what's the learning objectives of this course and how to assess the students' learning. For the logistic considerations, as you can see in this figure, the time for designing MOOC courses were one of the main design considerations. However, at the bottom, you can see the software, the tools for communication. These technology part was less considered by the MOOC instructors. So to engage the learners, one of the MOOC instructor mentioned he sent out the message weekly to engage students, to tell students what they should do in each week. For research question 2, what are the challenges that the instructors encountered? So the assessments was the main challenge for the MOOC instructors due to their many learners in each course. So it's kind of difficult for them to efficiently and effectively assess students' learning. Besides assessment, engaged learners is also a challenge for the MOOC instructors. And time limitation is the main logistic challenges for the instructors, as you can see in this figure. So one instructor from the US, he mentioned that it took a lot of time for him to get the videos done. And also even the university encouraged instructor to offer MOOC courses. However, he didn't get the course release from the university. How did they address the challenges? So most of the instructors, they explored other MOOC examples. For example, there are many popular MOOC courses in Coursera or FutureLearn. And also the second strategy they use, they try to seek help from the MOOC platform or from their colleagues and institutions. However, you can see in this figure, a few of them try to go to conference or read news, try to learn how to design MOOC courses.
So they go online and browse and see what's there, talk to others. That's how they're getting their professional development in MOOCs. They're not getting to official training kinds of things. Yeah. But we have another study looking at PD that we submitted recently, and we're actually rewriting it right now on instructor PD and motivation and career development.
Yeah. So for example, one MOOC instructor, he mentioned that he explored other MOOC courses and noticed other MOOC courses used questions embedded in the videos. He liked it, and also he used this in his own MOOC course. So the implication of this study is that these findings may inform other instructors what's the concern of the MOOC other instructors, and then how did they address these concerns. For the instructional designers, the findings may guide attention to the instructional designers in the area that MOOC instructor might need help in consultation.
And that study is available free online. There's a link there. If you download our slides, they're up at trainingshare.com. Dianne has a copy. It's a 13,000 word paper. It's a long, and it includes the survey. So it's one of the longer pieces I've had.
Yeah, thank you. So we will briefly talk about our third study. Before we start talk about the third study, I would like to clarify the key terms. Self-directed learning, here we used a Garrison's model, which include 3 perspectives: self-management, self-monitoring, and motivation.
Some of you may know Randy Garrison's work, also looking at communities of inquiry, looking at Deweyan models of Dewey's ideas impacting distance learning. He's kind of the historian in the distance learning field from the University of Calgary, Randy Garrison.
So due to the massive learners in the MOOC courses, so the learners need to have self-directed learning skills to be successful in MOOC courses. However, their self-directed learning abilities and skills may vary in different learning environments. So the instructional design can greatly influence students' interaction and engagement. However, currently few studies examine the MOOC instructional design for student self-directed learning. So the purpose of this study is to inform instructors or instructional designers and MOOC providers of the current practices of designing MOOCs to facilitate student self-directed learning. 3 research questions were asked in this study. First, how do MOOC instructors perceive student self-directed learning skills? And second, how do they perceive their role in facilitating student self-directed learning skills? The third question is, how did they really design and deliver the MOOC course to facilitate student self-directed learning skills? And also 2 follow-up questions were asked, such as technology use and expectations. To answer these questions, we used a sequential mixed method design, in which we piloted interview with 4 MOOC instructors. Based on the interview results, we developed our survey questions and piloted the survey with 48 MOOC instructors. And we revised the survey and sent the survey to 1,900 MOOC instructors and got a response from 198 MOOC instructors. So among the 60 MOOC interview volunteers, we've selected 22 MOOC interviewees and also reviewed their MOOC courses. This is a detailed data collection method. I have already talked about that. So
here you can see the the variables that Meina considered in terms of country, subject area, platform, number of previous online learning courses, number of previous MOOCs, and then type of MOOC. Was it with a TA, self-paced, and then what was the platform, FutureLearn, Blackboard, and so forth. So a lot of variables here, as you can see. And it was difficult making these selections to 22. I actually wanted to do 20, but 2 more people volunteered, so she ended up with 22. And each one is a rich data set of like 8 pages long. She's literally got a book from these 22 interviews. It's fascinating to read what these people are considering. Just, they're such smart people to be reading all their thought process and how they went about doing this. These are not people who are just doing it for the sake of, checking off on a box. They are really planning these out, I think, really extensively, actually. Some do gaming, for instance, and others do other things to make things come alive.
Thank you, Dr. So for data analysis, for quantitative data, we used SPSS and conducted a descriptive statistics analysis. For the qualitative data, we conducted content analysis using NVivo. To increase the trustworthiness of study, we used 8 strategies. I will not detail them here. So for example, we sent the interview transcript to the 22 interviewees and did the first level member check with them. The participants' subject areas, they are from like social science, medicine and health, and some from math, engineering, or biology. In terms of the research question 1, what are their perceptions of student self-directed learning? Most instructors, they thought self-directed learning are the skills that can be educated or the attributes that can be changed.
So there's hope.
Yeah.
They believe we can change things. As instructors, you can make an impact on SDL. That's basically what a key result of this study. Now, how do we do that? We're going to end up with a chart that has 10 things you can do. Well, that will be the last thing in this particular study.
So one of the MOOC instructor, Emma, she mentioned that her understanding about self-directed learning is that students manage their time, manage their coursework, and fits that into their own schedule and lives. And in terms of their perception of their role in facilitating student self-directed learning, all of them, they think that they can intentionally or unintentionally create a learning environment to help students self-directed learning. So Ashley, she mentioned that she provided assignments or online discussion forums to facilitate student self-directed learning. However, she also said that students have their choices and responsibilities. So the research question 3 is also the main part of this study. What are the strategies they are using right now to help students self-directed learning? We will talk about this from motivation, self-monitoring, and self-management, 3 parts. So for the motivation, instructors help students in terms of 2 perspectives, interim motivation and task motivation. Interim motivation means that, so to motivate students at the beginning of the course. So they help students through helping them identify the learning needs and goals. And also to help students task motivation, which means that how to help students to stay motivated during the learning process. MOOC instructors use the fun and clear instruction, optional multimedia learning materials, and immediate feedback and building learning communities. So one of the instructors from Australia, he said he asked his students to share their learning goals at the beginning of the course through this interactive map. And also you can see that the students are from different countries, US, China, and African countries. He also created a Facebook page and Twitter account for students to interact with each other and building the learning community. The second main part is the self-monitoring. So MOOC instructor helps students self-monitoring through helping them with their cognitive and metacognitive process, like providing progress indicators and also providing the learning strategies. For metacognitive process, MOOC instructor encourages students to reflect and think critically by providing reflection questions and building learning community. And also external feedback were provided as well. This is an example that MOOC instructors, they use a self-assessment in the course. And they also provide progress indicators to help students monitor their own learning process. And also external feedback like peer assessments. They ask students to submit their own assessment and also review their peers' assignments. The third part is the self-management. MOOC instructors help students self-management through three perspectives. First is enactment of learning goals. Second is help them with the time management and also resource and support. So I will pick some example like time management. They provide estimated time frame and also progress indicators as we mentioned before. So this is an example of the time management in the MOOC course. In this page, you can see this is a 4-week course, and also they provide the estimated time for watching the videos and finishing the readings. In terms of technology used to help students self-directed learning, they used 4 different tools like synchronous communication technology like Google Hangout or YouTube Live to hold a live session to address students' questions. And also they use discussion forum, blog, Slackboard, etc. Multimedia tools they use, and also feedback technologies. They consider technology can help students self-directed learning in MOOC courses. However, they also expect more advanced technology like adaptive learning system, artificial intelligence system, and also learning analytics. And also they expect the tools to embed it in the platforms to reduce student cognitive load.
Because right now they're using tools outside the platform.
Yeah.
And they're thinking that maybe in the future there'll be more resident inside the platform, next generation of tools.
Yes. So what we found in this study, we found that MOOC instructors perceive student self-directed learning can be changed, and also they think they have a role. They can help students to develop their self-directed learning skills. The specific strategies they use including motivation, self-monitoring, and also self-management, and technology plays an important role, and also they have more expectations for advanced technologies. Here are the 10 top strategies we summarized to facilitate students self-directed learning. For example, helping students set their learning goals or providing optional and different difficulty levels of learning resources like reading basic level and advanced level.
So this is the takeaway, right? This is what you might say, okay, how do we operationalize what you've done, you know? And so how do we train instructors? What do we tell them they should do? Whether it's these examples of building communities through the interactive map, or it's progress indicators or whatever, this needs a subset. So these are the 10 main things. Then we need a whole bunch. We need another book like Adding Tech Variety, Elaine. There's 10 things here like Adding Tech Variety. So each of these could be a chapter, and then you have ideas for each one of these that you could, I shouldn't give Elaine ideas. She'll probably be writing the book tomorrow morning. But knowing Elaine, it'll be in ResearchGate in a couple days. I think every day I go to ResearchGate, there's an article Elaine has published, but go ahead, Meina. I'm embarrassing her on purpose. So this is the studies that basically made us so these are 6 more. Okay, so we did 3, we showed you 3. So since she's become a student of mine here, she's been involved in these 10 plus 2 more, so about a dozen studies, including looking at, so the 5th one there is part of her qualifying exam. The 2nd study we presented was part of her qualifying exam. So she got 2 things up from that in the Canadian Journal of Learning Tech, which will come out in March. So that we found out today, that will be out in March, again, instructor motivation. We also have looked at Indonesian and Malaysian MOOC instructors as the 4th article listed there. We're waiting to hear back on that. And then we have a follow-up to our systemic review. We're currently collecting data on instructor engagement. So this is just being a kid in a candy store. When you got a database of 3,002, so we got 2 unique things. We got this database of 3,000 plus instructors, and we've got a database of Scopus articles of MOOCs that Meina and NIST have analyzed, hundreds of them, that no one else, I think, has. So that gives us an opportunity to mine it for research, but we don't want to overkill it. So the next study will be on gaming. I have a former student at University of North Texas wanting to look at gaming. So if you're tired of MOOCs, hang on, I'm going to briefly, 2 minutes, and we'll go to Q&A. My minions are tired. We're all tired. Everyone's tired. But we have to we just mention this personalization study that came out in September in IRODL. And Meina and I and Mink Young Kim, who's now at West Florida, Shuya Zhu out in San Francisco, Najia Sabar, and Anissa Sari. Again, the same kind of data about who the subject areas: business, social science, education, medicine. Medicine's bigger than I expected, actually. Much bigger, much more happening in the medical field than I had expected. Most people, when they design their MOOCs, they're thinking about personalization, but when they deliver it, they're not so much. So they have good intents, but it doesn't always follow through with complete action, at least from our data there. In terms of MOOCs providing automation and adaptation and AI, not so much. We read about it, we hear intelligent counseling, not happening. Plagiarism detection, not happening. Reminders of turning stuff in, intelligent agents, not happening. The only thing that's happening is automatic grading, which, okay, blah, they've been doing that for decades, right? And then in terms of addressing cultural diversity, transcripts, okay, audio of video and audio, subtitling. Be careful with hand gestures and language use and clothing, and be careful you're not offending people religiously, and your jokes, your humor, your metaphors. Like, don't mention baseball, potentially American metaphor in baseball. Slow your speech down, Dr. Bonk, and limit text. Use more pictures. We have another study we finished, but we haven't submitted, on cultural sensitivity. We've interviewed people who wrote chapters in my MOOCs book about how they're culturally sensitive. And then we looked at what instructional practices, typical discussion forums, supplemental materials, course announcements, email, tutorials, online videos, study groups, and synchronous. So what's the future? Future's so bright. Meina has to wear shades. She's got so many studies coming out, but stackable degrees, looking at micro-credentials leading to a master's, looking at a nano degree leading to a bachelor's or something else, stacking, and then partnerships between institutions to utilize the best practices of each within their MOOCs and coming up with new sorts of degree programs and majors. AI and adaptive learning, not so much now. So we've gone through, in effect, 4 or 5 of our studies. If you look at the 2-part one on systematic analysis, it's 2 studies. It's even one more. We've covered a lot of territory in about 35. We got started a few minutes after the time, so about 30, 35 minutes. That's a lot. So it's now time to thank our minions. Thank you all for coming to this, and note our address. So Meina's email is there if you want to write, and if you have questions, send them to her. I don't respond ever to email, so send them to her. No, as Dianne knows, I'm probably on too much. My email is kurt@kurtbonk.com or cjbonk@Indiana. So I'm taking us off share here, Dianne.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Lovely to see your faces again as well. So that was fantastic. There was a lot in there, and people have written a few questions in the chat. So I've got at least 3 really good, solid questions here. The first one is, do you think there's a balance between the instructor's learning objectives that the instructor needs to have in mind in order to design and teach the course, and how do you reconcile that with learners coming up with their own learning goals?
And that's a difficult one, because I taught a MOOC for instructors, and you might have something from interviewing people to add to this, but when I got arm twisted, I did the first MOOC for Blackboard. Okay, and they told me it would be webinars. Okay, I'll do a webinar. Eventually I gave into that, and once I said yes to that, they changed it to a MOOC. And people who took that MOOC had expected a connectivistic kind of experience, a lovey-dovey, hug and feel and share. And it wasn't that, because it was supposed to be like a webinar where you deliver and then question and have discussion and things like that. So my objectives in teaching my MOOC were pretty different from the students who signed up. That being said, Blackboard had 160,000 people around the world using the free version of Blackboard, and they wanted to train them on how to teach online. So those people that took the MOOC had similar objectives to mine. Because of the diversity of the audience out there that you have, the levels of expertise that they might have, the objectives are quite varied. And that's why satellite discussion groups are created. That's why communities of interest are created, to find a space and a place for people to branch out and have alternative discussions that are specific to their needs. That's why you see many MOOCs using blogging, using wikis, using other technologies, alternative discussion forums. Meina, do you want to copy or add to anything on how they're getting objectives? So the issue of objectives varying from the learner to the instructor.
I think I agree with what you said. So when I interviewed the instructors, they said they had the basic learning objectives of the MOOC course. However, because students, they are from diverse backgrounds, so they can help them to identify their personal learning goals through discussion. And then the learners can, based on their own learning goal, to get what they want to learn in this course.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're saying that the overarching objectives are just a launching pad for the personalised objectives of each participant. Would be fair?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Yeah.
Cool. I like the idea.
All the specifics in the announcement of the MOOC or in the intro video.
Yeah.
They evolve a bit.
Yeah. So that's fantastic.
You have to be flexible in teaching a MOOC. Let's put it that way.
And which brings me to the next question, actually, regarding the instructor's involvement in the actual teaching of the MOOC. So once the thing's designed and it's all up there, how on earth, how much input do instructors have typically, and how on earth do instructors manage time to do that?
Many of them have teams that work, and it's support teams. And there's actually some comment how surprised they were by the level of support that they got within their university setting. Many don't get course release, but they get people support, media support, production support, and those kinds of things. And so that helps them free up to be able to do more things. Do you want to add?
Yes, so as you mentioned that most of the MOOC instructors, they have a team that as an institution support them. And during the, when they finish the design and starting delivering the MOOC courses, some of the instructors, they devoted more time. So they went to the discussion forum weekly for several hours. And also they recruited some teaching assistants for their courses. Some of them have their graduate students as a teaching assistant, and also some of them recruited the student who finished the MOOC courses to come back as a teaching assistant to help kind of new students.
Yeah. Dr. Chuck Severance, who does the Python programming MOOC for Coursera, the top 10 in the world MOOC, he has people come back and become mentors to the next ones and he has office hours in hotels and cafes and meet students. I had 8 TAs when I did mine, and we had synchronous sessions. Some could play guitar during break time, I mean, I had, and they would read me the questions so I could deliver. I mean, so some people get support that way. Some people get very devoted. You become the class. Some of these people are so devoted. They're in the discussion forums. Others let the discussion forums to the TAs and others to handle. So it's quite a mix in terms of how much involvement the instructors have, but most stay involved during the part of the course, during the course delivery. Most stay somewhat involved. They don't just create the content and walk away for the most part.
No, and that team approach sounds really encouraging, and what you've described is really quite a model of distributed teaching going on when the MOOCs are up and running. It's a great idea to think that there's a team involved and that former participants in the MOOC and students would get involved too. That's fantastic.
There's a talk that someone in Alberta, a provost or president of Alberta, I'll try and send you the link to it.
Yeah.
He talks about if there's 40,000 people in the MOOC, or 10,000, I think maybe it was, and they're paying $40 for the micro-credential at the end. That's $400,000 that you can then create a production crew, and do a lot of things with. So, yeah.
Yeah, to make it self-financing. Yeah.
Yes.
Self-funding, that's great. One last question about time management, because that seems to have piqued the interest in terms of the time management for the students and the use of such techniques as progress bars, which some of our audience today are familiar with and have enjoyed. What else can you tell us about how you can help students or participants to manage their time in MOOCs, to get things in on time and to be active?
George Valencianos did one study of study skills of learners, and the metacognitive kinds of things, the note-taking things that they're doing with the content, the meetups and study groups that they might have. And of course, Sarah has created meetup spaces that, the New York Public Library, for instance, where MOOC participants can come meet up. My friend Paul Kim did a MOOC where they had meetups for students to create content in other languages or lower bandwidth videos and all sorts of things to help with access. You want to add?
Yes, besides what Dr. Bonk mentions, MOOC instructors mentioned they have, for example, they made the learning materials like short, so that students, they can finish at a very short time, and then they can just watch a video during on the subway or like on the trip to the work. And also another strategy they use, they provide the flexible deadline for students. So students, because they have maybe most of them have their full-time job or have their students in college. So they have the like estimated deadline, and students have the choice to submit before the deadline. But if they want to get a certificate, as long as they submit the assignments before the session finished, then that's okay. So it's kind of flexible time for students.
The video issue is coming out over and over in the research my class is reading now. Getting production skills. In fact, Chronicle of Higher Ed last week had an article about instructors needing to learn how to do this kind of thing. And today, Inside Higher Ed had an article about Zoom meetings. In fact, there are 7, 8 advantages of Zoom meetings. And so this is an age where we're going to be increasingly doing these video productions and knowing how to cut to the chase. We covered a lot of territory in 30 minutes there instead of, that could have been, an hour and a half presentation. So knowing how to divide things up into short snippets is coming out in the literature over and over again for these MOOCs to maintain engagement.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it reminds me of the guidelines about writing for the web too, when things were more text-based, and now that we're moving to more multimedia, we need to think about how to do it well as well. Oh, that's fantastic. Very, very useful. Judith in the comments has just commented that in relation to what you said about teams teaching and supporting in the facilitation and delivery of the MOOC, that must mean that the institution's well and truly on board and creating a team to be available. Would you have any comments about institutional backing to start with?
There are a lot of articles related to and showing that production teams are important. I think there's pieces on Harvard, for instance, that's been widely disseminated. In fact, the Harvard MIT group has made their data available, their data visualization tools available, and that kind of thing. Here at Indiana, I did the first MOOC. I did not have support from my university because it was an unofficial MOOC. My dean did come down and during the last session and say hi and thank you and all that kind of thing, but I had Blackboard support. Blackboard, which I'm not saying was the high end, but it was some support. And I don't know, we've interviewed maybe close to 40 people now, 22 plus 12 plus 10. Must be close to 40 some that you've interviewed. I mean, she does an interview. I mean, it's just like amazing because 2 days later I'll see the transcript. And I'm like, oh my God, she's done a lot of work. What do you see in terms of production? How often do you see them talk about production teams?
I think as you mentioned, like most of the MOOC instructors they mentioned, they have a team that support them in terms of the design and development of the MOOC course. So they have, some of them, they have the like teaching learning centers kind of help them with that. And also they have like instructional designer to help them design the instruction part, have the technology person to help them with the video recording and also editing the videos and adding the multimedia in the MOOC courses. So, and some also they mentioned that the MOOC platform like Coursera, maybe they also provide some like technology support if they need some other functions or technology features. Yeah, most of them, they have a team to support them. Or kind of
even to create simulations, animations, games. We're seeing an increasing number of people thinking about gaming kinds of things. That's why this next study is going on. And that might be needed for this engagement side of things. You also have to embedded assessments. So there needs to be someone involved in creating those embedded assessments. So there's a number of aspects of the production team, but the video recorder is extremely important to have a studio facilities that are fairly high level to be able to do this. It's very important.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think that my recollection of some of Elaine's work with flipped learning has been that when creating videos for use in a flipped learning context, that sort of high-end video production's helpful too, to make the videos really good quality. I remember Elaine saying about that. Right, we're in our last 10 minutes, so I'd like to invite any other pressing questions or any final points from the participants, from the audience that you'd like covered, or if anyone would like to talk and say anything, you can unmute yourself and join in.
Show us your video, say something, get on screen. So,
is that Elaine Koo still there? Has Elaine got anything to say? Who else is here? Let's have a look.
Someone just put something in the chat.
I can.
There's Elaine.
Hello. Thank you for the talk. I really enjoyed that. I had a question as well, which I've been grappling with in terms of MOOCs, Kurt and Meina, which you can hopefully enlighten me on. I've been looking at this issue of evaluating MOOCs as well. And Kurt, I don't know if you remember, but remember we had that ad media session where the presenter was talking about, student retention is no longer a good indicator of the success of a MOOC, simply because of the diverse nature and learning goals that people join MOOCs for. And so they recommended that we go and look at other kinds of evaluation methods. For example, the method that speaker that we were in the session was talking about, where where they're borrowing ideas from management schools. So I just wondered whether has there been any update in terms of evaluation of the success of a MOOC in your studies, Kurt and Meina?
You want to first.
Some they have like students read this MOOC courses to evaluate the level, so the quality of the courses, like the Coursera or the.
So student ratings of the courses.
Student
so
ratings.
Course talk that we had earlier.
Yeah, and other ways MOOC instructor they mentioned maybe use we can track the students' log data to see how the courses, which part of the course design is great, which part they need to improve for them.
So engagement might be indicated by what pieces they're accessing. So you might look at their activities, you might look at their feedbacks, you might look at, in a physics study that we looked at last week in our class, they looked at students who are not MIT students compared to students who were MIT students in a high-level engineering or physics class. And they found that those students coming in that didn't have much skills in physics learned the same amount of content as the MIT students, but they still would have flunked the test. So they came in at 10% knowledge, got up to 40 or 50% knowledge. The MIT students came in with 60, 70% knowledge and got up to 90%. So the gains of each group were the same. But from one vantage point, you would look at the lower group as failing, but they weren't failing, they were learning. So looking at so that was one study, anyhow, that got a lot of media attention here in the US, anyhow, showing that you could be teaching a diverse amount of students and impacting all of them, even with their different objectives. Goes back to Diane's question earlier about having different objectives coming in. So the metrics can be that notion of learning. A metric might be persistence into the next series of courses. The metric might be what percent of those people decide to go for or sign up for the certificate. The metric might be who re-enroll in the next course in a sequence of courses. The metric might be what percent of people either obtained a job. I'm talking about Udacity MOOCs from the guy from Sebastian Thrun's tend to be more corporate-based MOOCs. And he was for a while guaranteeing people jobs at $60,000 or $100,000 in programming. I think he took the guarantee away now, but still, what percent of people taking those corporate-based MOOCs are either finding and landing a job in the industry or getting promotion? So looking at life change kinds of things. So there's life change variables, there are attitudinal ones, there are motivation and persistence ones, and then there are learning outcomes. That's a typical thing that we look at, but the learning in a new light, learning as in terms of not pass fail, but learning of any kind. So there's some things that I'm seeing in the literature. There's tons more. I mean, this is just off the top of my head, but you know, yeah, there's just, there are different ways to visualize the backgrounds of these people, male, female, educational level, coming from developed world, developing world, and then looking at how they progress and succeed in that particular move.
And I'm guessing as the facilitator of a MOOC that you can have a course appraisal, or you can have a questionnaire to the students at the end and say, did you meet your own learning goals? Did you learn what you came here to learn? In Judith's words, Judith said, did the MOOCs ask, did you learn what you came here to learn? One of the issues I have with that one is, for a long time, our appraisals here at Waikato used to ask online students, was this paper what you expected? And we would be ranked on that. And apparently it was deemed a good thing if the students got what they expected, whereas I was always trying to surprise the students and to teach them something that they weren't expecting, or to completely turn their...
No, Dianne, would you do that?
I was trying to be a bit exciting, but this rebellion, I don't think it comes.
I remember the great debate with you, and I didn't stand a chance when you were on the floor. Oh my God, Dianne, I'm sure you have.
We did win the great debate, didn't we, back at the final Dean's Conference in 2016.
I'm winning next time, I'm telling you.
So well, let me just that could be FLANZ 2020.
Yeah. I'm winning that one. 2020. Yeah. I've got a book, Education 2020. I hope to write by then. Yeah. But, you know, here's the thing. With that course talk, Timothy did machine learning analytics on existing data. And he found something out nobody knew. I mean, he found these are the things you need to embed in your MOOC. So basically what I'm pointing out is there's data there to be mined.
Yeah.
If someone wants to do research in this, because I mean, you just have to have a creative question, an innovative question that answers something important. And he did. I mean, and this guy, he was at EdMedia last year presenting this, in fact. He was also at the Korea conference I mentioned earlier the month before. So some in both. And his name is Timothy Hu, Kifang, Timothy Hu. And
H-E-W, yeah.
Yeah, and if you get a chance, read his stuff, because he's had these insights. Others have as well. I mean, if you look at the MOOC, there's a lot of MOOC literature, but there's a lot of really creative things going on in terms of even how the courses are marketed. Yeah. You know, is another area that is informative. Finding out how do people, 100,000 people find out about this kind of thing. You know?
Yeah, well, that's no mean marketing feat. That's pretty great, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what a nice note to finish on too, with creativity and innovation and thinking outside the square at the forefront. I think we are 1 minute away from closing, because you have got to get off to your game, and it's getting later and later in the evening in Indiana. So
colder and colder.
Really? Oh no. So
I have my scarf.
Oh, the scarf, it's it's a team scarf as well. So thank you so much, Meina. So lovely to meet you. And thank you so much, Kurt, Professor Bonk. Absolutely lovely to see your faces and to hear a little about your work. We will have the recording to you and also up on the FLANZ networks along with the SlideShare details and a bit of commentary in the FLANZ magazine, and really hoping to see you at FLANZ 2020 as well.